This is Gemara Menachos, Daf Nun Ches, and we're holding on Nun Zayin and Beis. We're about 10 lines from the bottom. The first one line is Rav Shishes. Amar Rav Shishes in Megufoi Leishim. So says the Gemara, Itmar, question that as always is going to seem to be a little bit unrelated, but as always a little bit of a first cousin to the previous discussion. Says the Gemara, Itmar, Hamalemi kulam al gabi kevesh. So it brings up all of them on the kevesh. So we were discussing bringing up parts of the karbanos that not supposed to be brought up onto the mizbeach. But here we discuss that you bring up parts of the karban that are not supposed to be there, not on the mizbeach, but on the kevesh, on the ramp. So says the Gemara, Rav Yochanan Amar Chayiv, Rav Lazar Amar Pater, 6 lines on the bottom. Rav Yochanan Amar Chayiv D'Tanya, Mizbeach Ein Li Al Mizbeach, Kevesh Minayin, says the Brisa, when the Torah says that you're not allowed to put the Shirayim al Gabi Mizbeach, Val Mizbeach Li Al L'Riach Nichayach. When it says Ela Mizbeach, says the Brisa, it only teaches us the Mizbeach. The kevesh minayin, how do you know? You also not allowed to bring it up onto the ramp. Talmud loymar ve'el hamizbeach lo yalet l'reach lo yalu l'ratz. Says the Brisa. Well, it's different gersais over here. Ve'el hamizbeach lo yalu l'ratz and ve'el hamizbeach lo yalu l'reich nichayach. So explains Rav Yochanan comes the marbe, even the ramp. Rav Lazar Amar Pater, 3 lines from the bottom. Then Zayin Beis my time Adamar Kram. Says the Torah Saru Devash. Korban Rishis Takrivu Oisam. That the Sa'ar, the leavening, the Devash and the honey. Korban Rishis Takrivu Oisam. Offer them as a first korban to Hashem. Says Rav Lazar, what does this pasuk teach us? Oisam Udarabi L'chol Kevesh HaMizbeach. Them, the Shtei Alechem, and the Bikurim, the first fruits, those are the ones that you could bring onto the Kevesh. Those are the ones that are allowed to be brought onto the ramp. Aval Midi Achrini Loi, but other items, Loi, not that you're not allowed to be brought up on there, but Loi, that the Kevesh doesn't have a din of Mizbeach, because nothing here you're allowed to be brought up on. Question is if it has a din of the Mizbeach. And with that, we turn over to Nun Ches and Aleph, and says the Gemara, the classical game of ping pong. What does Rav Yochanan do with Rish Lakish's pasuk and vice versa? Says the Gemara, Rav Yochanan, 1 second. We're blocking the words. Rav Yochanan, hi. Oisam my avidei. What does Rav Yochanan do with the word Oisam? Says the Gemara, Mi Bailich the Tanya, Yach, I would think Yachin Misnadiv. Umevi, I would think that a Yachid could be bringing a dava and bring a korban. Umevi Kyote by Nedava, Vekariani Ba, and I would consider Motzis Mesechet Shmar, Ve'asisa. He's following his word. Baruch Atah Adonai Yalinu Melech Olam Shakol. Talmud Leimar, says the Torah, no. Korban Reishis Takrivu. You bring it as a first korban to Hashem, which means Tzibur Amarti L'cha V'loi Yachid. That the Tzibur brings the Shtei Alechem and not a Yachid. So Rav Yochanan uses the drash of Isam for a different din. Continues the Brisa Lo Yehi Yachid Mevi. I would think that Yachid cannot bring Shtei Alechem as an Adava. Why not? Because there's no similar korban. Aval, maybe that's only a Yachid. Aval Yeit Tzibur, maybe Shemevi Chavasa Ki Yotzei. Ta'amalei Mar Oisam. Uma Yeshachal Lahavi. So now Lamaisa, what do you have to bring? What is the Chiyuv from the Tsar and the Dvash? Shtei Alechem. Min asiyah rubikurim min advash. Says the Gemara. Okay, so that's what Rav Yochanan does with Isam. But once we quote this Brisa, the Gemara has a bit of a problem. Ushtei alechem lo yakrivu Nidava, says the pasuk. It says the Gemara, excuse me, the Shtei Lechem cannot be brought as an adava. Really? V'atani learned to the Brayse. Him nemar kol sar lama nemar kol davash. V'im nemar kol davash lama nemar kol sar. Neshi sar mashein bidvash v'yesh bidvash mashein b'sar. Each one has a unique quality, which is what? Sar hutar mechlalei ba'mikdash. The sar, the leavening, doesn't have a general isser in the base of mikdash. Whereas davash lo yutar mechlal b'mikdash. Davash hutar b'shiarim menachos. Davash is allowed with regard to the shirayim of the nachos, and sar lo yutar b'shiarim menachos. Says the Gemara, so habimnei sheisar mashein b'davash sheisvash mashein b'sar. So I don't understand, because each one has its own unique properties. Therefore, hotzach leimar kol sar, v'hotzach leimar kol davash. Therefore, it has to say kol sar, it has to say kol davash, because each din can't be learned out from the other. So says the Gemara, so now what's the clincher? Se'ar dehuta mechlala b'mikdash mayhuniu. So what is this se'ar that is not part of the regular klal in the Beis HaMikdash? What is the exception? Says the Gemara, lav shtei alechem de karva nidarva. Is it not that the shtei alechem can be brought as an idava, which is a stira to what we just quoted in the Brayse of Isam? How Rav Yechon explained to Isam was to teach us that shtei alechem cannot be brought as an idava. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Amram, lo no. Bikarev imahem, it means that are brought with them. Says the Gemara, Yachi. Meaning, it's also true, like the original Brayse said, that the Shtei Alechem cannot be brought as an adava. But the Brayse is adding on that the breads themselves cannot be brought as an adava. But there is a kula that what? That the seirei, that the lambs that are brought together with it could yes be brought. Says the Gemara, if it's true, Bikurim nami, then Bikurim should have the same kula. Why? It's not. Hagoizaloi shal gabi asalin. The doves that are upon the baskets on which the Bikurim are brought. Hayoilais. The goizalais were oilais. They were a carbon oila. Vasalim, and the baskets should be in their hands. Given to the kahanim. Hanu, so says the Gemara, what do we see? We see we should say the same kula, that the extra limud akra should teach us that it's only by the davash, and we'll learn up from there to the sa'ar. Responds the Gemara, no. Hanu la'atara bikurim uda'asa. That pasuk is talking about us to crown the bikurim that the Geizlis come with, to beautify the bikurim, so we can't learn it out from there. Says the Gemara, let's go back to our original discussion that we started, which is what? Which is the shiyarim, the shirayim, the remnants of the mizbeach, remnants of the karbanos, we started today with if those remnants can be placed on the kevesh, on the ramp. This is part of the larger discussion, whether the remnants can be placed on mizbeach. Says the Gemara, Bayi Rami Bar Chama, Meir of Chista. Hamale, about 20 lines to the bottom, the first one line is Chista. Hamale mibzar chatas ha'oif al gabi mizbeach. Someone who brings from the meat of the chatas ha'oif on the mizbeach. What's the question? Says the Gemara, usually, let's just get clear, the chatas ha'oif, the dam, is placed on mizbeach, and the basar ha'oif, the meat, is eaten by the kahanim, and it is not brought on the mizbeach. So we're discussing a case that you went and you brought the meat on the mizbeach incorrectly. So do we say that the Torah said that it's usher to burn on the mizbeach any carbon from which part of it was already went onto the mizbeach? V'hai, and this carbon ha'oif in mimenu l'ishim. None of it went on the mizbeach yet. Oidama kol sheshemai carbon, or anything that is shemai carbon or samai that was designated as a carbon. V'hainami, and this also shemai carbon. His name is a carbon. So, what is the defining factor in the isser? Is it if part of the animal, part of the carbon is brought on the mizbeach, you can't bring the rest? Or do we even say that this carbon, this oilas oif, this chatos oif, excuse me, that the dam is brought on the mizbeach and as a shame carbon, that is enough. Amar lei responds Rav Chisda, kol sheshmar carbon, v'hainami shmar carbon, and therefore it is part of the is. Says the Gemara, but in truth, kitanai is a machlekes tanayim. Rabbi Eliezer, Omer kol shman ali ishim, says Rabbi Eliezer, anything that part of it has to go on the mizbeach. Rav Akiva, Amar kol sheshmai carbon. My beinai, Omer Rav Chisda, basar chatas oivi k'benei mamish our case, because the mice is a carbon, but none of it goes on the mizbeach. Rav Amar second half kamina lug shemen shel mitzaira ika beinayu. The lug of a mitzaira is going to be the difference. Why? Titani Levi, because again this shemen is not brought on the mizbeach, but it does have a shema carbon. Titani Levi called carbon and the rabbis like shemen shel mitzaira. It comes to marib, it has a shema of a carbon, so it'll be included in the isser to bring it on the mizbeach. Tana Rabbanan continues the Gemara, 10 lines on the bottom. Sa'ar bal atak atiru, says the Torah, do not burn the sa'ar. Eli alakulai, mixasim minayin. Where do we know you can't burn any part of the sa'ar? Tamalay merkal, eruvay minayin. Where do we know that you can't even burn a mixture of sa'ar and matzah, called unleavened stuff? Tamalay merki. My kol says the Gemara, my kamar. What do we see this? Amar Abaye achi kamar sar about taitiru. Eli eli kazayis chasi zayis minayin tamalamar tamaloi mar kol a ruvain minayin tamalamar kiko. Rava Amar 4 lines on the bottom. Achi kamar sar about taitiru eli ela kaimetz. Chati kaimet minayin tamaloi markol. Eruva minayin tamaloi markikol. So my commentary, what is this machlokes? Abaye is over yesh covers achzei. Whereas Abaye, well, 1 second. Abaye says there is a concept of a kaimet pachs b'shtei kzeisim, and therefore, like the bottom Rashi, v'lo saktiru like kaimet shali mashma. And when we have the isser of lo saktiru on the kaimet, has to be on the entirety of the kaimetz. V'kivan di'ish kaimetz pachs b'shtei zeitim ashmin and kol yisera. Whereas when we turn over to Menachos and Beis, a short Amid, it says the Gemara and Abaye as well as the Aktara pachs migzayis. There's a din of the Aktara. There's a din of burning the carbon as well, less than a gzayis. And now Rashi as well spells out that what hektar kamatzay pa'amayim kshera. You're going to be chayiv because you can burn it in parts. And that is going to be the aside of our machlekes. Continues the Gemara, Itmar. Hamale misa'ar umidvash agav mizbeach. What is the status if he brings from the sa'ar and from the dvash, you mix it together and you burn it on the mizbeach? Amarav like misham sar, like misham dvash, 2 separate isrum, 2 separate malchus. Like mishamei ruvei sar, umishamei ruvei dvash. As well as there's a malchus if they are mixed together, and as well as mixed together. So 4 different sets of malchus potentially. Abaye Amar no, ain't like in a lav shabachlalois. This is a yisoidistic machlokes. Says Abaye Natim a lav shabachlolos. You have a general lav. There's no malchus. Some say that according to Abaye, you don't even get 1 malchus, and some say you do get 1 set of malchus. The haloi miyache lavoi kelav de chasima, cause the isser is not specific, as it is by the lav of chasima. So it could be that according to Abaye, you get no malchus. If you look at the last Rashi articulates there's no specific lav. each lav is a general lav, and that's why there'll be no malchus b'chlal. Rashi continues with other cases, and we'll pick it up from here. B'siyata dishmai.